Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start out with a quick fantasy trip out to Nosara, Costa Rica, which, thank God, is finally reopened since all the COVID's been going around, and check in with our buddy Craig Sutton. He'll tell us what's going on over there, and then we're going to start a trip around the state of Florida. We'll start up in the northeast corner, work our way all the way down south, and then out through the Panhandle, getting the word from the water from guys that have been at it. It's been a pretty good week of weather, so we have had quite a few boats offshore. I'll be anxious to get the reports. I don't feel cool weather coming anytime, so it's going to be interesting to see where the fish are at. We hope you enjoy this evening's podcast, and if you do, please subscribe. Please take it to a buddy of yours that doesn't catch fish. Help him out. And remember, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. And by Young Boats. You want the finest flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You want to check out youngboats.com. All right, let's land our plane right here at the Nosara Airport, step out, and be greeted by our buddy Craig Sutton. Craig, how we doing?
I'm good, Captain Ricky. Real good, buddy. Just got back to Costa Rica last week.
How good does it feel to be back fishing those waters again?
Oh, my gosh. Like, you have no idea. You really and truly don't. The place is such a special spot in my heart. Many, many ways over and above the fishing. But for me to not be able to go down there for 7 months was tough. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but when I was leaving the airport, I mean, I almost got teary-eyed. It was just it's like, you know, I can only fish from about 12, 1 o'clock, 1:30 on when I'm down there. Some days I can't even do that, but I got 3 little short half days, and we did pretty good. We had, a 54, 35 on the yellowfin, and then a 30, and went out and got a nice marlin, some little mahi, and some more sailfish. Sailfish are pretty active right now.
Good deal. Good deal.
Along with the marlin, too. There was one boat called us in on that first day to a porpoise pod bite. He had gotten 2 marlin off of it and a couple, I think he had 2 sailfish. He lost 2, and then a couple mahi and the yellowfin. But we got the last hour before they shut down. But that's okay.
Gotcha.
Still better than nothing.
Hey, Craigie, we got a question for tonight.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yep.
In your opinion, what mistake does a weatherman make the most often?
Well, I think everybody up here in northeast Florida has got to agree the north wind. I know the models are a little more accurate now than they used to be, but they'll misjudge that wind by 5 or 10 mile an hour, and then it won't back off when they say for a day or a day and a half. But there's a lot of times there. I mean, yesterday's forecast here, I fished the ledge here, and it was spot on. They were calling a lot of swell, a 4 to about a 6-foot swell, and then they said, I think around 2 or 4 o'clock, the wind was going to pick up out of the northeast, and it did. It was a good fishing day, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I got you.
We eked it out.
I agree.
Big Thing, I had no problem with that stuff.
I agree with you. And as Captain George taught us when we were boys, never trust a forecast with an N in it.
Well, the one that I really don't like to go out on is that northwest.
Sure.
I'll go on a northeast because then once I make it out, I got it to my back on the way home, or at least, on my side. But that northwest, dude, I don't want nothing to do with that bad boy.
No.
Coming in from 70 miles.
I've gotten in real trouble twice in my life out there, Craig, and both times it has been on a northwest wind where we got cut off. And
I think that's usually where the horrible stuff comes from,
Yeah.
Because you fight it for 70 miles. And it's just brutal.
Oh, don't remind me. I know. Okay. Craig, as always, we appreciate it. How can people get a hold of you if they want to go to Nosara?
Hey, and you know what? I've still got a lot of really, really high demand dates opened up, and they're filling up fast. They can call me at 904-591-2161.
You got it. Okay. All right, Craigie, we appreciate it. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, brother.
We'll start our trip around the great state of Florida this evening up in the Northeast where Captain David Voorhees has everything under control. You with us, David?
Hey, Captain Ricky, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good, man. It is going good. I appreciate that bucket you left on my dock the other day, by the way.
Well, I would have had more, but, every now and then I'll get these Eastern European people, and they don't want me to fillet their fish. They want to bring home a whole fish. So twice within the last 3 weeks, the people brought home whole fish.
You know what? I kind of like that. I started doing it with triggerfish, but triggerfish now, I cook the whole fish, David. There's a lot of meat in those heads and throats and such.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the fishing this week was sort of on a roller coaster. I mean, we had some really good days and we had some tough days. You know, I'll be honest with you, the water it was absolutely gorgeous. It looks really good. You know, you go out on some days and you think you're going to kill it and you just struggle. And then some days you go out there and you don't know what to expect, and lo and behold, you just whack them real good. So it's typical fishing right now. We're sort of in this transition period. You know, we still have a lot of what I'd like to call summer fish around, you know, a lot of jacks, some ladyfish, still plenty of snapper around. But we're also starting to see some of the sheephead. You know, the sheephead's starting to move in. We're starting to see a few more of those. So we're going through this transition. Water temperature, I know I keep talking water temperature, but, you know, it's sort of key for us up here. I think in Northeast Florida, we see a much wider water temperature range than you do in South Florida. So I tend to pay attention to it a lot. It was still up into the mid to high 80s, and I'm waiting for it to get down. I'd love to start seeing some 75-degree water temperature. That would really make me happy. I think that would turn on the trout. You know, we're not getting the numbers of trout. Now, I talked with several captains, you know, are y'all seeing any trout? Are you seeing any trout? There's been a few good reports coming up from Nassau, a few good reports down in St. Augustine. But, you know, Rick, I think we're just settling for this, you know, a good day of trout fishing is, you know, hey, we catch 15, 20 trout. Rick, I can remember days fishing with my dad where we pretty much lost count after 100 trout.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, I'm serious. We would catch so many trout. It was just one after the next. And I hope those days are not gone. I hope young kids can have the type of fishing experience I had as a kid, where you just almost caught a trout on every cast. Haven't seen that in a few years, Rick. It sort of has me concerned and worried. But we'll see how this winter goes. Red fishing's been really good. It's been outstanding. Just some fantastic deep water jigging. I'm so happy that I started doing this deep water jigging years ago and starting to get more in tune with it, and I'm learning more every day. You know, if you're not out fishing and learning something new, you're doing something wrong. I really do think so. You know, fishing should take you to school every day. You should go out there and go, wow, that's interesting. I learned something new. Well, that's sort of the way I feel with this deep water jigging, Rick. There's some spots I go to and I'm like, all right, guys, they're going to be here. We're going to tear them up. And I think maybe those fish have moved on. They're not there. So I give that spot a break. I give it a rest. I come back 3 weeks later and it's stacked up with fish again. So that leads me to think that, you know, you got to be careful with some of these spots like that. You can pressure these fish. I really believe you can push fish out of an area.
Sure you can.
If you overfish it. You know, being an inshore guide, you know, I'm limited to how many spaces I get to fish. So there's a lot of times I go back to the well 1 or 2 times, and sometimes that's 1 or 2 times too many. But with that being said, flounder fishing was pretty good this week. Talked to a lot of guys down in St. Augustine, and they're seeing some nice fish down there. They seem to be more stacked up towards the inlet, something the biologists tell us this is the time of year where they start moving out to the inlets. And that's what we're seeing going on right now. So I really think if you want to go out and get some flounder fishing, it's still good. Go out closer to the inlet. Start working your way towards the inlets, the big inlets, either Nassau, St. John's, or down in St. Augustine, and look for docks near those inlets. You know, there's so many docks along the St. John's. There's a few docks up there on Nassau or off of Black Hammock, and there's quite a few in St. Augustine. And that's what I would do. I would work those areas, pick you up even some finger mullet or some mud minnows, put them on a jig or spinner bait, toss them around the docks and fish around there. And I'll bet you'll come home with a good mess of flounder right now.
I think you will too, but I think we really need a cold front. It's almost November. Roger and I have talked about it so much, and we used to fish in jackets in October regularly.
I know.
And,
I know.
I think we need a cool down. We just haven't had it yet for whatever reason, but hopefully that'll be here soon. But, David, let me tell you something before we go. You were talking about being a roller coaster inshore. It has not been a roller coaster offshore. It's just been slow. We got this big swell from the blow that we had. And whenever we get that, David, it stirs up the bottom. The bottom fishing has not been good. I talked with Captain Bo from the Mayport Princess today. He said, a few Almaco jacks, a few beeliners, a mutton or two, but it just wasn't very good for the last week or so. And it's not going to be good until the ocean settles down and that swell goes away. So just keep that in your hip pocket. Both Captain Craig Sutton, who was at the ledge yesterday and caught 2 bonita and 1 sailfish, which ain't much of a day, and Captain Bo both said that the swell was big, which stirred the water up. Let it lay out a little bit. Don't go on the first couple days that it calms down, and you'll end up with better wintertime fishing.
Hey, can I take a stab at the question? I'll make it real short.
Okay, here we go. In your area, there in Northeast Florida, I know what I think. What do the weathermen miss the most? Where do their mistakes happen?
Well, I know you'd say wind, and that is the case. And it actually, if you watch the weather report, it is pretty hard to find wind direction and the amount of wind that you will receive on the weather reports. So you really don't get a good wind direction or wind speed report from the weathermen for some reason. And this being a coastal town, you would think that would be in the weather report, but it's not, Rick. But the thing I really think they miss most of all is just these early morning. A lot of times they call for bad weather. You wake up in the morning and you just look outside the window and you go, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I think a lot of times they just overplay the weather. They want to scare us. They fear sails now for some reason, but definitely you just don't get a good wind report.
David, you make an excellent point, and I'll leave you with this. I did meet one of the 4 men that started the Weather Channel. And he said, the number one thing to remember is that the first job of the Weather Channel is to get more people to watch the Weather Channel. He said, now, I'm not saying we over dramatize. I'm just saying our job is to get more people to watch the Weather Channel. It's a good point.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Cap.
Tight line.
All right, we have arrived in Rockledge, Florida, the home of one Jim Ross. Jim, how we doing?
I'm doing good, Rick. I'm doing fantastic. I got back on the water this past week. My doctor cleared me, and I actually got out on the water. So I'm feeling really good right now.
Good deal. That boat crank up after all this time?
Well, Justin's been running it. You know, I'm on a pro staff program with a boat company, and that boat, whenever I had my injury, instead of waiting until this September, which is when I normally would sell the boat and pick up my new one, I went ahead and sold it at that time so that new user could use it all summer long, knowing that I couldn't be in it. And then we've got another 24-foot bay boat plus a 17-foot tunnel hull that we use, whenever for our charter. So Justin's got his own boat. I've got my own boat, and then we split duty on the little 17 tunnel hull.
I got you. Okay. How was your first trip back out?
Well, the fishing was great. The catching was pretty good.
Okay.
But the main thing is I got a chance to get out on the water, and that's just fantastic. It's been 4 months since I've been out, and it just feels so good to get some fiberglass back under your feet and then bob around a little bit. Conditions were not ideal whatsoever. We had an east wind at about 15. Water was going out of Sebastian Inlet instead of coming in, so we were dealing with dirtier water conditions on that outgoing tide. But we did manage to get a number of jacks. Most of those fish came on topwater plug, which is even more fun when you're talking about jack crevalle. And then we got trout up to 22 inches, and we got some redfish up to about 29 or 30 inches.
Oh, cool.
So overall, I was completely satisfied with, having not been out for 4 months, I was completely satisfied with what we caught, how we caught them, and my performance on the boat. So I think it's a win-win.
Oh, good. Didn't stir up your back to go?
Well, all of those little muscles that you use when you stand on the deck of a boat that we don't realize that we use until we don't use them for 4 months at a time. Yes, I felt all of those little muscles, those little stabilizing muscles and things that you use. I launched out of the Christensen's landing boat ramp down in Grant. So you have Grant Farm Island right in front of there, and then another island just to the north of it. And so they create wind blocks on the east wind and allow you to kind of split between them and then get over to, it's a very short run to get over to the Mullet Creek, Honest John's Canal area on the other side of the lagoon system there, without having to run across too many wide open areas where you would encounter, any heavy chop or anything. So running through relatively calm water, I'm in a 24-foot bay boat. It eats it up. So it was good. It was a good trip out.
Good deal. All right, real quick. You mentioned you were catching the jacks on topwater plugs. What were you catching the reds on?
The reds and the trout they would not play with the artificials at all that day. We didn't catch any on artificial. We didn't catch them on live mullet. We ended up actually chunking the mullet up and catching them on the chunks because they were running from everything that moved nearby.
Huh.
If the lure came past them, you could clearly see pods of 8, 10, 12 trout or snook or whatever. You could clearly see the redfish cruising down the shorelines. We were sight casting to them, and everything that moved in front of them, they just either ignored it completely like it wasn't even there or just bolted away from it. And so, when you have those kind of conditions, I told the customers, I said, look, it's not going to be fun. We've caught some fish on lures in the morning, but it's not going to be fun. But we're going to have to take these mullet, chunk them up, and just kind of sit here and stage up and wait. And let the current flow, let the scent get down to the fish. And so what we did is we kind of, repositioned on a couple of the pods of fish that we had seen along the mangroves there, repositioned just up current from them, put the anchors down and, went ahead and cast the chunk baits out. Just within 30 seconds to a minute, the scent starts, trailing down to where the fish are sitting and you see them start moving and you're like, get ready, they're coming. And they come up and they just pick the bait up. And of course, with a circle hook, you just reel tight and away you go.
Perfect. You just made such a good point, Jim, and it's a mistake I see people do all the time. They throw that chunk bait out there, and it sits there 30, 40 seconds, so they got to move it. They got to move it. They don't understand that bait's chumming for them the whole time.
Yeah, let it do the work. It's not a live mullet. It's not going to swim around and create vibration and distress signals. So you have to allow the scent trail to work for you.
And boy, there's a lot of times that a chunk works better than a live mullet, isn't there?
Yeah, and especially when you have conditions like we had, where you've got fish that are doing exactly what they were doing. They were running away instead of coming to. And when you have fish running away, there's nothing you can do that's going to make any difference in the world except for slowing the presentation completely to a crawl in some cases.
Bingo. Great point. Jimmy, thank you so much. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Take care.
Captain Jim Ross from the East Central area of Florida, where he says the inshore fishing is very good, but the ocean just has been too inconsistent weather-wise. Jim and all of our action spotters are brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrids? You want to check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. All right, let's take it on south down around to the Stewart area and see what's going on with the captain of the mayhem and the chaos, Captain John Earhart. John, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you, Cap. How's your fishing been?
The offshore fishing, we haven't been able to do much of it, but the weather's kind of allowed us to get out there this week. So, I kind of keep an eye on the swells, but it's definitely manageable. I was out at the inlet the other day, and there's about a 4 to 6 foot ground swell, but with these light winds, it's nice and easy to get out the inlet on an incoming tide. On an outgoing tide, you definitely want to slow down and make sure you have your swells timed right, because you don't want any accidents to happen when you're heading out the inlet. That's for sure. But if you do get out, it seems like there's a lot of good activity right outside that dirty water. You find that dirty water where it meets that clean water. A lot of guys are drifting or slow trolling live finger mullets, larger mullets, and they're having a lot of action from blackfin tuna, mahi, and sailfish this week. So, usually got to go about 4 to 6 miles out, find that color change, and, start live chumming with the mullet, and chances are you're going to have a mixed bag of pelagics this week.
I got you. Okay, well, that sounds encouraging. The mullet been easy to get?
They were a little tougher last week, but yesterday it seems like there was a lot more mullet in the river right around the St. Lucie Inlet. There was finger mullets, and there was some larger mullets that were about 8-10 inches. I prefer those bigger mullets for sailfish and blackfin tuna, because I want to catch the bigger sails, tuna, and mahi if I can. And a bigger bait is going to have a better chance of getting seen out there when you got a lot of ocean to cover.
Gotcha. Now, John, how are you hooking a live mullet to troll him?
Typically, I just hook them right through the bottom and the top lip. I do know when I do that, they're not going to be able to breathe as easily.
Right.
But I'm also not going to drown them if I'm trolling a little bit faster, at some point throughout the day. So I typically try and have their mouth closed. That way I'm not dragging them through the water and drowning them.
I see. Well, that makes perfect sense. I'll be darned. How's your inshore fishing been?
The inshore fishing's been pretty good this week. We're catching a lot of slot-sized snook around the bridges. There's been some tarpon up to 60 pounds around the bridges. I've seen a few bigger ones, but, the average has been 30 to 60 pounds. A lot of black drum, a few sheep's head, and some redfish around the bridges right now as well. If you're catching redfish and black drum, that's going to be shrimp on the bottom. And the tarpon and the snook is usually using live mullet on the surface, or putting a knocker rig on there and sending it down to the bottom, fishing it around those pilings.
All right, so there's a lot of snook around. The Roosevelt Bridge has got some. What bridges seem to be hot?
Seems like the 10-cent bridge, the Roosevelt Bridge has been all right. I typically am fishing those bridges on the incoming tide just because it's got a lot of fresh water coming out with the Lake Okeechobee discharges. So it seems like the fish have been more active on the incoming tides when the water is a little bit more brackish as opposed to fresh.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's been good. And the fall run of mahi seems to be coming up the coast pretty regular. The guys have done fairly well with them. I hope that continues. John, as always, we appreciate it so much, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to y'all next week.
Okay, buddy. Now we're going to go on south to Miami and talk to the mayor of Miami himself, Captain Alan Sherman. Alan, are you with us?
I am with you, Rick. Just off the water and getting ready to fuel up for the next one.
Back-to-backs?
No, but, got to be ready.
Okay.
You don't know when the next call's coming.
Alan, I don't know about you, but those back-to-backs aren't quite as much fun as they used to be for us old guys, are they?
You got that right. I don't turn them down, but, it's like you cringe a little bit because you like a little break in between sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But no, everything is good. Everything is good. And believe me, the weather today was like, I don't know how it happened, because the forecast was for 60% chance of rain, and we have just had a ton of rain in South Florida, way more than we need. The streets are still flooded from everything we had the last 2 days. I almost canceled this trip. I actually did cancel it last night, but I left it open. I said to the guy, when I get up in the morning, if it looks good, I'm going to give you a call. And if you can still make it, we'll do it. And turned out that's exactly what happened. I got up at 6, took a look outside, and it was still. Took a look at the radar, took a look at the forecast, and they dropped the forecast from 60% rain down to 30% rain. And we had no rain the whole time we were on the water, just mostly sunshine. It was beautiful.
Well, good deal.
We have a lot of bait in the area, a lot of finger mullet. There's big schools of pilchards. There's Spanish mackerel of decent size around, although they're not easy to find yet. The water was 81 degrees, still a little bit warm for this. We need a couple of good cold fronts to drop the temperatures down. Today I fished for mutton snappers in shallow water, and it just wasn't happening for us. 2 blacked out live wells, chum like crazy. We managed to catch some undersized muttons, undersized gag groupers, jack crevellas up to 9 pounds, yellow jacks up to about 4 pounds, and a few other odds and ends. So not quite the day I wanted, not what I was expecting. On the offshore scene, they're catching some kingfish just outside the reef. They're getting blackfin tunas. There's some dolphin out there. We've had some hard east winds, so it's blown in some fish. But I can't say that it's phenomenal fishing. It's just fishing. You get out there with some quality baits, whether they be live or dead, get them in the water, and give an area 30 minutes. And if nothing happens, start looking around. Other than that, the flamingo fishing, there is tons and tons of mullet in flamingo along the coast. A lot of pilchard schools, and the tarpon were going nuts. We had a fish on probably 130, 140 for 3 great jumps and a nice run before the fish fell on the line and broke off. And then we had another one about 60 who did the exact same thing. And then we added a few missed shots all on silver mullet. And then we also had some snook that we caught on, snook and redfish that we caught on pilchards. So there's some fish to be caught. It's not red hot. We're still in like almost summer conditions, here. 81 degrees, so it's still warm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what we all need, Alan. We got enough of a northeast wind to kick off the mullet run and get it going, and thank goodness they finally made it down to your area. But there has been nothing since then, and the water has steadily been creeping back up all along the coast.
I don't know when we're going to get a front. Look, we got a hurricane, almost a hurricane anyway, in the Gulf of Mexico again. Those poor people on that coast. And who knows what's going to happen thereafter with our weather systems. I'd like to see a good cold front come down. We're not far. We're very close to November here,
Alan, we talked about it earlier. I used to fish all the time in October in a jacket. It just seemed like it was consistently cool, but I am looking forward to my bibs and my heavy Yamaha jacket and a chilly morning. I sure am looking forward to it.
Well, me too. Maybe not the heavy Yamaha jacket because that is pretty heavy, but definitely would like to put a thermal top on every now and then to get our fishing going, I believe.
Won't be long. Thank you, Captain Allen. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, Rick, you have a great one. Look forward to it.
Appreciate it. Now let's head on down to Islamorada, the fishiest place in Florida, where we'll catch up with Captain Nick Stanczyk from the Broad-Minded. Nick, are you with us?
I'm here, Rick. How you doing?
Doing excellent, Nick. We had a listener question for you this week. What we're started doing is taking questions from the people that hear the podcast that want to know about a specific area. Now, I believe you had a picture posted this week of you and your dad with a monster snook. First off, how big was that snook?
Really nice one. I don't go in the backcountry very often. My brother, we went up camping our swordfish trips. It was blowing 15 to 25 knots, and I jumped on a boat with them. And my dad, he didn't catch a good fish all day to the end, and he caught that big old snook on a live pinfish, and it was pushing 40 inches. If I had to guess, I'd guess 38 inches. I caught 2 small ones, but my brother, he was better at backcountry fishing because he caught 6 or 7 of them. And
golly, that's fantastic. Now, our listener, Christopher Cole, wanted to know what rod, line, and bait was used to catch that fish.
So he probably had on, I believe, a spin fisher 6 reels, a pen spinner reel.
Sure,
that'd be
spin fisher 6.
Size.
Uh-huh.
He usually uses 20-pound braid on that.
Okay.
He's using a heavier leader. My brother likes to fish this heavy leader the last couple of years, just because the water's dirty. He doesn't like 3-time hooks every time. So he's actually using 50 and 60-pound monofilament leader. So he's kind of heavier than I would thing most people would traditionally use.
Right.
And then just live pinfish, just hooked up through the lips and
All
taking
right.
them out there and letting them drift around.
A Spinfisher 6. Do you remember what rod it was?
Probably a 12 to 15 pound rod. Sometimes he's got the outfit. He has a few old custom rods. So 7-foot spinner though.
A 15-pound spinner, 20-pound braid, a 50 to 60 pound. Are you using fluorocarbon, Nick, or just straight mono?
Nah, just straight monofilament. About 3 feet of it.
Straight monofilament to a live pinfish. It's hard to get simpler than that. Christopher Cole, that answers your question, and hopefully it'll help you target one that is every bit of that big. All right, what's the forecast looking like? Is the weather going to lay down for you at all?
It's looking a little better towards the end of the week. My wife's pregnant, and we're not due for another 5 or 6 weeks, so we're kind of on standby. We thought the baby was going to make a early appearance last week, so we had to visit Miami a few days in a row, but luckily she's still in there. So if it's really rough and windy, I'm trying to stay home just so I can be close to her. But I'm hoping to fish Thursday, maybe Thursday, Friday this week. And, we had a lot of rain and wind the last week down here.
Sure. You're having a girl baby?
Yep, we got another girl. I think it's the saltwater.
Fantastic. All right, Cap, we appreciate it. We'll look forward to talking with you next week. Keep us posted on how that baby girl's coming, all right?
Hopefully in another 5 or 6 weeks, but if it comes sooner, if I don't answer next Monday, that's where I'm at.
Okay, you got it. Captain Nick Stancic of the Broad-Minded, we sure appreciate it. Now let's pull on over into 10,000 Islands and check in with our man, Steve Dahl. Steve, are you with us?
I am. How you doing today, Rick?
Steve, you guys aren't expecting a baby, are you?
No, not at all. I'm single, so that's going to be difficult.
No, it's not difficult, Steve. It still happens, I promise.
Well, I know it certainly does, but the lady of my life is not expected.
I got you. Well, that's a good thing. All right, tell us about your fishing, Steve. What's going on in 10,000 Islands?
Quite a bit. I hate to sound like the broken record, but now's the time. It's fall, good tides. Today was one of those days. We had probably about 28 redfish today, I think. We lost count, about 25, 20-something, somewhere in that range. 4 or 5 fish over 30 inches. I mean, just a banner day. So the focus is clearly on the red fishing right now. I wish the water temp would probably drop a little bit to kind of get the trout fired up a little bit. But, that's a great day. But when you're catching 10 to 15 reds a day with customers, boy, that's pretty darn good. The fish are bunched up. Outside points, a lot of the locals know that pattern, and it gets a lot of pressure. So the one thing that you can do to alleviate that is you're kind of getting in this, what happens generally, especially on like Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays when that bite's really good, you start to see everyone dotted on these outside points and the outside islands. Instead of playing the weak frog game, if you will, that's kind of what I call it, is just trying to find an opening somewhere and jump in. Try the adjacent bays, because those fish are still there. They have all these outside points, and then, kind of look on your chart and find these little smaller shallow bottom bays that are adjacent to these outside points, especially on the higher tides. Those fish kind of push, back into those bays, and they're not seeing any pressure whatsoever. I mean, we sight fished probably, 7 or 8 of them today, just looking at them, and they weren't skittish. I'm not in a pulling skiff. I'm in a big bay boat with a loud trolling motor, and that's what you want, the dumb ones. And again, going back to anytime you can look at them, I'm happy. So it's been pretty awesome on the inshore side with the redfish.
I tell you what, you've got the report of the week so far. Steve, up the East Coast, our water temperature is too hot, and our fish have gotten kind of lethargic. You're not experiencing that?
We're finding patches of water probably in the mid to upper 70s. I mean, the lowest I've seen is 76. A lot of that stuff is hovering in below 80. So if I can keep it below 80, those fish will stay bunched up. And we've been getting a lot of overcast days. And, today was one of them. We had bright sunny conditions for the first couple hours of the morning, with everything kind of going in the Gulf again right now with, another named storm out there. Those poor people in Louisiana are going to get hit again. But we're going to get the outer bands of that. Tonight it's raining really good. This afternoon it's poured. And we're going to see a little bit more of that the next couple of days. And it's going to bring in the swells. Getting offshore is going to be another challenge, which has been kind of a real bummer, because 2 straight weekends of American red snapper have just pretty much been off or not, just because of the the strong southerly winds. And now they're going to be coming from the west with some swells. So that's not going to be all that fun to be venturing too offshore. Nearshore bite's doing real good though.
Yeah, you guys are very fortunate to have that. It's ironic to me that the water is cooler in the 10,000 Islands than it is off Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, it really is. It's very odd, especially as much shallow water as we had. You would think, obviously shallow water warms up a little bit, but I don't know if that's from the southerly blow that we've had from these two previous storms that brought in all of that. We had strong south winds and these big swells. I don't know if that pushed some cooler water in there. And as you know, Rick, it only takes a couple degrees to kind of really get things fired up. So I like that upper 70s. If I can get that thing to 72 to 75, that's great. If they're chewing now, they're certainly going to be chewing at that point. But that's going to get everything else fired up in the area. It's pretty good. I'm hoping that, if there's one benefit of another blow like this that we're going to have, is I'm hoping the triple tail starts stacking up. We've gotten some good reports. I personally haven't really dedicated a lot of time to it. There's a lot of smaller fish out there, keeper size fish. I know one brute caught about 17 pounds, which was that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. But that one was just free floating. That was just by chance. So that wasn't really staged, stacked up on the buoys. And the other part is with the buoys, not to prolong this, but with the overcast skies, you're not getting the algae growth on these things either. Not as when it's bright and sunny, they're going to start blooming, if you will. And we haven't had that just yet. We got a lot of clean lines, if you will, and you want those lines a little dirtier.
Don't like clean lines. That's right. We want them algae.
We don't.
You're exactly right, Steve. What a great report, and we appreciate it very much. It sure looks like you guys are going to just get the outer bands of that storm, and I'm glad of that. And I'm with you. I pray for the people in Louisiana. I just hope they get through it okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, Cap, we appreciate it. We'll talk with you next week.
Sounds good, Rick. Looking forward to it.
Now, let's pull on up into the Southwest region where Greg Stamper just got a message on his phone that he has to go to his Traeger grill and take off his brisket. Your life's hard, Captain Greg.
Hey, I had to wake up really early, Rick, today to put that thing on there. So I'm excited to get home. Plus, I had a 4-hour trip today that turned into 8 hours because we had to dodge rain nonstop. So I did have to pay for it in some way.
Well, how was the trip? How'd you do?
Well, overall, it was very, very good. We caught a lot of redfish, but we had to keep going back to the dock because I don't mind rain, Rick, but, lightning is an issue, and we had a lot of that today.
Don't like lightning.
Yeah, don't like lightning, and these are really good people. And I'm like, look, we will keep going. We're gonna fish for at least 4 or 5 hours today, period. And it took us 8.5, 9 hours to get it done, but it's all good. We caught a lot of fish today in the back bay. The redfish bite, Rick, just continues to be fantastic. I don't even think it matters right now if it's incoming or outgoing at all. I can tell you I fished incoming today. I fished outgoing today. I also fished slack tide today. And we caught fish on all those spots, all those time frames exactly. We caught them on shrimp for the most part, as well as cut bait, because the water was so crystal clear in my area that I think, they can see you. If you can see them at any point, they can see you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I think sight fishing in general, by the time you see the fish, he's generally already seen you. It's not always an advantage to do that. But have you heard anything from offshore?
We've had a really, really rough week as far as the wind went. The winds were anywhere from basically, 10, 12 mile an hour up to 15 on a regular basis for pretty much every day except for today and yesterday. But the guys who went out today, I did not see them. I know those boats have been pretty much sitting at the docks this entire week. But the guys who did take advantage of it, and Rick, if you're in this neck of the woods and we have hard east winds, northeast, southeast, we talked about it before. The nearshore waters within 4 or 5 miles maybe, when it blows hard from the east, they're like a sheet of glass, flat calm. Mm-hmm. They've caught a lot of tarpon this week, and we've also seen those same tarpon in the back bays busting on these big schools of mullet that are cruising around. But more importantly, and I know you're going to love this, you're going to smile when I say it, the cobia are definitely here.
I like that. Ain't no doubt. Well, Greg, you guys are in the heart of it. you and Steve a little bit there to your south, you guys have had the best fishing in the whole state, I think, this week. That's absolutely outstanding. I'm going to let you get to your Traeger because my Keurig just called on line 1 to tell me that my coffee is ready.
All right, thank you, buddy. I got to drive home and get through traffic. It's about to pour on me one more time.
All right, brother. Talk to you next week. Now let's move up to the West Central area and talk with Ray Markham. Ray, how we doing?
Very well, thank you. How about yourself, Ricky?
Good, good. I know you're ready for your Rays to go ahead and win the World Series, aren't you?
Oh, gosh, I hope so. Tomorrow night's going to be a tell 'em tale for sure, I think.
Yep.
They've been in the game and out of the game both times, I think, in each game.
That great Rays fan base of you and 438 of your closest friends.
Yeah, right.
Let's talk fishing. What's going on in your area, Ray Markham?
My gosh, if you're an inshore guy, you're probably still going to concentrate on snook and redfish and even trout in some areas. But if you're even close to near shore and sometimes inside the made parts of the bay, Spanish mackerel action has just been off the charts. I was talking to a guy the other day who shot out about 9 miles offshore, not too far, but he ended up with a 30-plus pound kingfish.
It's a good one.
So there are lots of kings out there. And what I'm hearing is that there's some big ones out there too. But I mean, a lot of people aren't giving up a lot of information right now because there's tournaments that are either just starting, have just gone off, and are getting ready to start here. So they're being a little bit tight-lipped, even though they got tails and they move and they keep moving. They're just not really saying a whole lot. And right now, I think the temperature thing that we've got going on is probably having the most effect on these fish. With the weather, they predicted I didn't really get outside a lot today because I've been doing a lot of catching up work here inside the house. But we're supposed to be hitting almost 90 degrees today. We're almost looking at November, and I'm going, this is crazy, because our water temperature should be in the mid-70s right now, and it's closer to 80 or thereabouts. That's the situation, but, I mean, there's tons and tons of mackerel around. They're still catching a lot of big redfish, both inshore and offshore, off the beaches. So those big breeders, they're in schools, and I've heard of guys that are fishing nearshore waters 50, 60 feet, and they're catching these giant redfish. So hog fishing is picking up by the day. Triple tail are showing up in much better numbers. I think the attraction to the stone crab traps that are dotting around the edges of the Gulf, they're bringing a lot of fish in. They're all baited up, and they smell whatever's in there. And a lot of guys will start out using pig feet, and as it starts getting colder, some of them will switch over to carcasses from fish and whatnot. But they got to have an effect as far as I'm concerned, because everything that smells of chum slick is gonna come sniff around, see what it is. I'm not so sure it's great news for the stone crabbers because of the fact that those stone crabs have a tendency to crawl on and move on cold fronts.
Right.
And we haven't really seen anything that's like a cold front yet. So we're still hoping, but everything else inshore is going great. Flounder fishing is still kind of floundering, but as far as like the snook, redfish, and in some areas the trout, they're doing really well. And I really do think come this time next year, now I'll get people that'll complain and say, you shouldn't have said that. But I think that they're probably going to be opening if what I'm seeing is any indication of the stock rebuilding.
I certainly hope so. I hope we get back to reasonable and attainable harvesting. That's what we want. We want reasonable limits. We want guys to be able to keep a fish or two for dinner, just not get excessive with it. You're right. October is the new September. And hopefully, when the first of the month comes, a little bit of cool weather will come with it and get both the stone crabs and the fish on the move.
We had great triggerfish close today. Not that it's a huge targetable species out here, but there's a lot of guys that do go out and get them, and they certainly are delicious. But we're sitting here looking at all these things going on, and typically I think of shallow water grouper fishing into sometime in late December. And traditionally that's what it's been. But with the water temperatures slowly creeping down. I think we might even be able to go into January with this near shore stuff. But typically when we have some hard cold fronts coming through, it'll push those grouper, the gags back out deeper again where the water temperature is a lot more stable. So I think we got previews of good coming attractions. So all's good on the home front.
Ray, I hope you're right. I hope your Rays bounce back and take the World Series, and we'll talk with you next week if that's okay.
Yes, sir. We'll catch you then.
Now, let's head up into the Big Bend area. We'll stop in Homosassa to check in with the mayor. And, Mr. Mayor, are we still eating hamburger helper in Homosassa?
We are, and you know, it's getting morphed into tuna helper because the venison has just eluded me so bad. It's we need a cold front really, really bad here on the west side of Florida, and maybe, hopefully, this coming weekend we'll get a little bit of it, being no storm comes our way.
Oh, William, I tell you, we need it all over Florida. Incredibly, the water temperature is cooler down in 10,000 Islands than it is in Jacksonville right now.
That's crazy. And, you know, we got down at the end of September to 72 degrees in the Gulf water. Right now we're back up to about 79 to 82, depending on how shallow you are.
Bingo.
And, yep. And the bite's been good, though. You know, there's been a lot of fish that generally push through in the, you know, September, early October that are just lingering on the Big Bend area.
I tell you what, that's a good thing because there's a lot of areas where the fish have just gone lethargic in this warm water and they don't know what to do. It's supposed to, the calendar says it's cool time, but it's still 85 degrees outside.
Well, as an angler, I would suggest on the Big Bend, be ready for anything and everything. There's been gag grouper in 8 to 10 foot of water on casting plugs.
That's good.
Just keeper size ones, so that's been good. And catch them on live pinfish, 30-foot range. And then we have the red snapper and everything. Now, I haven't had any captain's report on that. We had a bad windy weekend last weekend. This weekend, I wasn't around to see if any were brought to the dock. But in that 60-foot range is generally where the red snapper bite is. And I believe there's still one more weekend that we have over here on the Big Bend side to get out after them. Now, I have caught some cobia this past week and a few triple tail. Trout bite's been really good. The reg's kicking in. That's just been too easy. Redfish bite, great. Snook bite's been great. The only thing is this is like fishing in August, but with a really good fish bite. So, you know, I guess it can't be that bad. Just wear sunscreen and keep putting them shorts on.
No, sir. There's nothing wrong with that. I miss fishing cool only because our fishing's generally so good. But if you've got the good fishing and the warm weather, that's a bonus for you.
It's been very good. And like I said, as far as inshore goes, we can catch a nice mangrove snapper and black drum, which is a crazy thing because generally it's always a December, January, February bite in the Homosassa River. Catching black drum in the deeper holes and just your traditional winter spots like Hell's Gate, in the Gustavs Bay and areas like that with a shrimp on a jig head fish down along the edge of the channel or any point that drops off near the channel, black drum, which is this crazy thing. The other day, we were catching left and right in the river in T-shirt and shorts and sweating, which is generally black drum to me just means that's when you're in the thick jacket with the hoodie, with the buff on, and it's just, you know, crazy, but also some nice keeper mangrove snapper in the same area. So those fish have tried to move in, and I don't know. We got white pelicans that showed up here on the Big Bend. So, you know, I think a lot of them maybe have turned around and started flying back up to Wisconsin. They said it's too hot. But, you know, there's a couple. I saw one lone one today, and he was like debating whether he should go north or stay here.
You know, it's funny. We had a big flock of them fly in about 4 or 5 years ago. And apparently they held a meeting because when it came time to go back north, they said, yeah, you know what? I'm thinking I'll stay. I'm fine. so they've become residents.
That's a funny bird. We get the brown pelicans is pretty much like a staple here in Florida.
Sure.
But I always think about the white pelicans. I always show up in October, and it's kind of it just throws you for a loop because you may be out there in 6 or 7 foot, fishing for trout or, on some nearshore rocks, and you look inshore towards St. Martin's Keys or something like that, and you see this big white boat. It's like, oh, dang, man, the tide almost turned in. Somebody's already beaten me to my spot. And then you start running in there, and all of a sudden you look down, and it's like 12 inches deep, and it's like, oh, that's no boat. That's a flock of white pelicans sitting on the point.
Your eyes are almost as good as mine, Cap. We appreciate it so much. That's a great report. And keep that hamburger helper going. A deer's going to have to move eventually. William,
something's got to happen.
Something's
got to happen.
What was the old thing with the vultures? Patience, my butt. I'm going to kill something. I mean, something's got to happen for you. All right, brother.
Something's got to happen. Just got to keep trying.
That's right. We'll talk with you next week, William.
All right.
Now, let's pull in Northwest Florida and find out what's happening with Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, I'm doing just great. How about yourself?
Good. You been in the ocean?
Oh, yes, we have. We've been in the ocean. We got really wet on on Saturday, and we had a good day Saturday, and we didn't get wet on Sunday, but we had a good day on Sunday as well.
Good. Tell me about it.
Well, Saturday we had a short trip, just a little quick 3-hour deal, but it was the busiest I've been in 3 hours on Kings and Spanish that I can ever remember.
How about that?
We got in a pocket of fish and dusters and cigar minnows. I started out with 4 rods in the water. I wound up barely being able to get the second rod. Wound up with 2 in the water, barely able to get that second one back out, and the Kings were just all over it. It was amazing. And in that same batch, we wound up getting about a 10-pound mahi.
No kidding. How far offshore were you?
We were in 30 feet of water.
Boy, he was lost, wasn't he?
Well, the funny thing about it is, a few weeks ago, I had the same report where we got 2 mahi, and we got them right in the same exact spot. Only thing I can figure is there's been a lot of bait around, and we found a pocket of Kings and a big Spanish. I mean, the biggest ones I've seen in a long time out there. In fact, you had to look real close to determine whether it was a small King or a really big Spanish. That was, I had to use my skills there a little bit.
All right, let me ask you a question. What fights harder, a 6-pound kingfish or a 6-pound Spanish?
Go fish. I would say.
I would think the Spanish. I've always been impressed with the staying power of those big Spanish.
Yep. I mean, these were surprising. I mean, the first one I put in the on the deck of the boat, I said, "Wow, that's a small King," and I looked real close, and I said, "That is a big Spanish."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the bite was just incredible, and it's been that way a couple of days before I was out, in that same general area. And so I probably caught all the fish within a 200-yard area, and that made it really great. Really good day for a mom and her son that really had never been saltwater fishing.
Perfect. I bet you they go again. Now, what about Sunday?
Well, I was going to say I had to remind them that not every day is like that.
Isn't that the truth?
Sunday we went red snapper fishing. We had one of our openers. Actually, I got to hold a rod and reel for a while, and sharks were bad. Sharks were bad at the first couple of places we stopped. We probably reeled in a head of a 15, 18-pound big style red snapper, and that was a shame. In fact, we watched the shark take it, and we wound up scratching out a limit for our red snapper. We got really nice, probably 8-10-pound mangrove black snapper, and a nice, fairly large lane for a lane snapper. He was good size, probably half a dozen to 10 vermilion snappers. So we had a good day, a little lumpier than the forecast, as seems to always be the case. And, we wound up having a good day, a lot of smiles. I actually tried my first slow pitch jig, and believe it or not, my first fish on that jig was a beeliner.
That's weird. I'll be darned. I've jigged many a red snapper. I could count all the beeliners I've ever jigged on one hand, I promise you.
That was amazing, yeah. So that was our weekend. We had a good weekend.
Yeah, that's good. Now, you said on the kingfish you were using dusters and cigar minnows?
Yes.
And you're talking about frozen cigar minnows, right?
Yes, frozen cigar minnows.
I got you. Trolling them how fast?
About 3.5 knots.
Okay. I got you. All right.
And one of them, I had a 4-ounce trolling weight in front of the duster, about 4 feet. And the other one I was actually using a small planer. It's called the Delta Diver that I brought from the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, cool. Which one worked better? Or did it matter?
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it was matter which one I got out and put in the rod holder first.
Gotcha. All right, Cap, listen, we appreciate it. We enjoy your reports so much every week. You have a good week, and we'll talk with you next week.
All right, Captain Rick, good talking to you as always.
Thank you, Kevin. Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state for tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Hey, the West Coast had all the advantages this week, it seemed like. On the East Coast, the water is hot. The fish are lethargic. There just hasn't been a whole lot going on. Actually, a little better inshore than offshore, but my goodness, it's been brutal for the offshore guys for the last week or so. If you come around to the West Coast, the redfish are on fire all the way from 10,000 Islands up through the Panhandle. And there's been a lot of gag grouper, better gag groupers than we're used to seeing. So things are looking pretty good. We just need a break in the weather. We needed to get cool. Hey, we've enjoyed our trip around the state tonight. If you've got a question for us, just hit us up on Facebook, any of your social media sites. Leave us a question for the area you want to ask the expert, and we will check with them next week on the podcast to get you an answer. As always, we sure enjoy knowing you're listening to Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast, and we hope that you subscribe. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Nosara, Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you on the rip.